All right, we are live. Hey, it is Brent Leary. It is a new week, and I love doing new weeks because that means I get to do a few good minutes with somebody really cool and has something to say. And I'm just curious and interested about the person and the subject matter, and that is definitely the case for this for my guest right now. Matter of fact, this is like the third attempt for me doing this. So I'm so excited to have Hamish McKenzie, who is the co-founder of Substack, with me right now. Hamish, thank you for making time for like the second or third time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, when it comes to people wanting to engage and communicate and usually like I'm watching cable TV and I'm seeing like cable news, and you usually see they have guests on, and they're usually guests from like the Washington Post or the New York Times or Wall Street Journal or any of those places. And like about 6 or 7 months ago, I started noticing that a lot of those folks who were used to be at those, well-known mainstream kind of publications, they weren't saying behind, underneath their name, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times as much. They were saying Substack newsletter, or they are being introduced as, oh, and they have a newsletter on Substack. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And then I started seeing more and more people with Substack newsletters. And of course, I got curious. And now you can't go anywhere without people not mentioning their Substack newsletter, which has got to be kind of cool for you. So,
Yeah.
tell me how Substack came about, just a high level.
Well, at a high level, Substack is a response to the attention economy. Um, Started off with just me and Chris. He's the CEO of Substack. I started off as the COO, but I've changed recently to be the chief writing officer. Um,
Nice.
and Chris was sort of asking me for feedback on a blog post that he had written because I was a journalist at the time, and I was one of the few journalists he knew. And in this blog post, he was decrying the sort of problems with the attention economy that's clickbait and online advertising have given rise to these types of behaviors and content that were driving people apart, making it harder for us to understand each other and work together, and having really bad effects for the media economy as well. Like how do writers make money in this kind of environment? And so those sorts of questions led us to discussing these problems more. My feedback to him in that blog post was, you're identifying all the right problems, and everyone in media knows that these are the problems. But if you're going to make this a really good blog post, you should add a couple of paragraphs about what's a productive alternative, what's a good solution. And to Chris's credit, he didn't finish the essay, but he did. We did. We started a company to address those problems based on the hypothesis that direct payments from readers to writer is better than trying to monetize with online advertising, because that way, instead of the piece of content being the thing that's monetized, it's a relationship, a trust relationship between the reader and the writer, and that's not mediated by any other party.
Absolutely. I'm going to pop up something I picked up from your writing. For as long as Substack's been around, it's been a place where people can directly connect with their audience. And then I kind of highlighted but this moment around Twitter has provided an opportunity to highlight what's different about Substack. And so I started, doing a search for different ways that people are using Substack. And I found this is a really interesting article. Long form Substacks offer MPs, so we're talking politicians over yonder, this opportunity for a chance to exercise thought leadership, which I thought was interesting. And then digging into her quote a little bit more, she found it was another step on the path away from Twitter, which has become a cesspool of bottom-driven rage farming. Okay, that's an interesting one. And then I started, reading, and I talked about seeing all these people kind of transferring over away from their kind of main kind of communication networks and channels. And this guy, Matt Iglesias, was interesting about what he's done. He did Vox before,
Yeah.
But he's done his own Substack. Now he's got 13,000 followers.
Paid subscribers, actually. 13,000 people paid
Paid
Yeah.
subscribers, absolutely. And it has created a robust comment section, which I thought was a really interesting thing to pull out. But he also kind of took a look at the Twitter specter as well. His Substack, he's got 500,000 followers on Twitter, but the conversations apparently get a bit out there. But I love this. It says, but his Substack is a place where a fractious world is rendered logical. Have you, as people, and I know he's been at it for a while there, are you still seeing or feeling this kind of, it's almost like this organic movement from Twitter to Substack because of, well, even before the recent acquisition, which may have made that a little bit more, loud, so to speak. But it feels like everybody is wanting to be able to have, a place where they can engage with thought leadership and respectful discourse, as opposed to what's going on with Twitter. Have you seen a lot of people coming to you guys because they want to get away from some of that?
Yeah, definitely. And not just Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. These places have their uses, and they can be a lot of fun, and you get a lot of value from it and make lots of connections. But the experiences in those places can also go really badly, and they're not necessarily good for healthy discourse, because the things that are rewarded are not the things that build a common understanding of truth, or prioritize quality or anything like that. The things that are rewarded are like who does the best dunk tweet, or who starts the fiercest flame war, who gets the most colorful insult away in a pithy comment. And those things have their places and they're fun, but it can turn into a bit of a Thunderdome, and it can turn into an everyone against everyone, all in brawl. And what gets sacrificed there is the discourse, the chance for a productive discussion to help people solve difficult problems together or understand difficult questions together. And so Substack is an attempt to sort of turn down the temperature on that kind of heated discourse that might happen in other platforms, and give people a place to find good faith argument and good faith discussion, and let nuance shine, and let people defend themselves at length and be understood at length, without some of the distractions and games that are rewarding bad behaviors swirling on around them. So yeah, I think that people who are coming to Substack from other platforms really do value is this place where they can be better understood. I think it's pretty simple.
Better understood, and it also feels like the opportunity to have a richer, more civilized way to engage, as opposed to just, like you said, like the loudest insults and tweets that people tweet to try to get retweets. And it feels like, even with the Substacks that I follow, it does feel like it's about like a real engagement, almost sort of like the MP said, engagement in thought leadership, as opposed to loudness, crudeness, and trying to get everybody's attention for doesn't even matter if you're getting it for the right reason.
Yeah, right. It's about deeper relationships instead of shallow engagement. So people don't get any points for being drive-by trolls in these situations. Even the comment sections on Substacks tend to be pretty damn good, and that's a change from recent years where everyone's just assumed comments sections turn into dumpster fires. And the thing that makes them good, I think, is it requires more intention to be there in the first place. So you have to have made the decision that I am interested in this particular writer so much. I don't have to agree with them, but I think they're interesting, and I'm willing to express my trust for them by letting them have my email address. And that is a little barrier to entry that requires some thought and some commitment to participating in a good faith discussion. And if you take it up a level, it becomes a paid subscription. And the paid subscription is kind of the ultimate expression of trust. And at that level, then it's a very strong signal to other people that you really want to be here. And other people who are similar to you might be able to send that signal in the same way with their paid subscriptions. And it really contributes to a much more healthy discussion and a much more like less heated, sort of less fraught kind of discussion where people are willing to understand each other.
You talked a little bit earlier about, the kind of the paid advertising, almost, that a lot of the social network kind of run on. And it feels like, because people are looking more for, more direct relationships, and more, thoughtful, deeper content, and an opportunity for discourse, that uh, what's going on with newsletters and with your platform is actually kind of fitting for the times. People are trying to get away
Yeah.
from all of the ads, and even, if your customers or your readers are tired of the ads, then it feels like this has been one of the reasons why folks are able to leave these kind of more traditional channels and build out their own networks, because people are hungry for them, and not necessarily the brand of the big, the big channel. And
Yep.
this is an opportunity for not only for kind of the writers, but for anybody who's trying to kind of establish themselves and establish a community around whatever they're really passionate about to write about.
Yeah.
Are you seeing more, not just the big name kind of folks, but are you seeing, lesser known folks are able to build out, significant followings, because this is a kind of a platform that really allows that to happen, on top of the need or the desire for folks to say, you know what, just give me the, this guy. I don't necessarily need to be over here with all, the big names. I like this, and I want to engage, and I don't just want to be a reader. I really want to be a part of this.
100%. Yeah, people feel much more invested in a particular voice or personality or person. It doesn't mean they'll stop reading the newspapers and magazines and other outlets. They still have a place in their lives. But having this deep relationship with a particular writer you trust is a really rewarding experience. And given the chance to kind of invest in that writer's mission alongside them, so that their work can exist and they can thrive, not just for yourself, but for everyone else around you, so their work can travel and potentially improve the world for the people around you. If you got that chance, you don't sort of pay grudgingly. You don't feel like you're pulling your wallet out to pay for content or like make a donation or something like that. You're happy to pay for it. And the experience of being a paid subscriber in that, and helping in that kind of context, and helping someone you love succeed, it's a really good feeling. And I do think people are ready for that more intentional kind of media diet. We've, boredom used to be a problem that needed to be solved. The internet was kind of good at trying to solve our boredom problem with games like Farmville, and then social media apps, MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, the rest. But now the problem is not boredom. The problem is overabundance. The thing that has become valuable is, how do I protect my attention? And so having these more intentional communities with deep relationships, going through this thought process where you decide, like, who are the people I really want to invite into my mind and help me see the world? It changes the dynamics of the sort of online media experience, I think, for the better. And I think this is what we're seeing with the success of Substack.
When you think about, you and Substack and what you guys are doing, do you view, since attention is really the main goal that a lot of folks are looking for, and then being able to get the attention and then keep the attention long enough to form some sort of relationship that can be more, go from attention to engagement, to a really cohesive long-term kind of interaction, that it's not just one and done. It's, hey, I got your attention, but hey, let's talk, let's consume, be a part of the community. Do you see like the TikToks and the Instagrams and the YouTubes, do you see that as competition to what you're doing with that, with Substack, or do you just look at other newsletter platforms as a competition?
We see the attention economy as something that needs to be reformed and built on different rules. But I think in a lot of cases, those platforms are kind of symbiotic with Substack. Like if you've got a large Twitter following and you're good in that kind of sphere, and you also have a place to send people to go have a deeper relationship with you, and it's Substack, that works. A lot of people do that. I think it would be better if they could do the things they enjoy on Twitter in a platform that has different rules based on trust and direct relationships. But so far, that thing doesn't quite exist. But it's something we're thinking about at Substack. We don't think of the newsletter platforms as our primary competitors. They are competitors and copycats in many ways. Like they've come along and sort of tried to say, we're just like Substack, but different. Like we've got ads, or you can have a different color on your background or something like that. But I think the mistake there is that to identify the thing that Substack is doing is kind of newsletters. Newsletters is something that we use as shorthand to quickly explain to someone who doesn't really know what a Substack is, but it's not sufficient. A Substack is a way to publish to email and the web, where both things are important. And you can have a community around that through the comments or through discussion threads or through chat, which we've just recently launched through our app. And you can have the direct relationships. You can have payments. You can publish video. So your Substack might be primarily video focused, or it might be a podcast. Lots of successful Substacks are just primarily podcasts these days. And for us, that's not a newsletter economy. It's a shift in the general media economy. And it's one that gives the superpowers of the internet to individuals so they can have these trust relationships with the readers who want to go deeper with them, or the listeners or the viewers. And so in that sense, I think as some players in the attention economy try to introduce features that allow people to do more things, like on Substack, for instance, Instagram has introduced subscriptions. Elon Musk has talked about doing more long form and payments in Twitter. That does bring them much more into the competitive circle with Substack. And the newsletter platforms, I think it's like a piece of what Substack is doing. It's like the iPhone is called the iPhone still, but the phone app is only a tiny part of what people use an iPhone for. It'd be a mistake to mistake it, to think of it just as a phone.
One of the things that everybody's talking about, I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold on to the ChatGPT stuff.
Oh yeah, that's good.
We'll talk about it. But you said you're a writer. Your background is a writer. How does Substack help writers become kind of multi-format content creators and generators? Because you do a podcast. A lot of people are doing video. It's definitely a different form of communication than the traditional writing. So how are you able to help writers, more the traditional folks, bring all these other elements into their Substack?
Well, we try to make it as simple as possible. One of the key things about Substack is to take the sort of cognitive overhead of running the publication just off the table for you. So you don't have to worry too much about what's my business model, or, how do I get this stuff emailed to my people? How do I manage my subscribers? How do I publish a podcast episode? All that we try to reduce down to the most simplest possible form, so that you can put as much focus and energy into creating the content as humanly possible. Like we like to say to writers, we take care of everything except the hard part, which is the writing itself.
All right, so now you just led me into the hard part, or should I say what used to be the hard part? Bringing up this article I saw that made me think of what's going on today with ChatGPT. Mind-boggling, possibly dystopian impact on the media world. You're seeing little kids in school getting ChatGPT to write their term papers. People that are get paid to write are turning to ChatGPT to help them with that. What are your thoughts? I even saw one of the other platforms, Medium, is saying, hey, you can use it as long as you let people know that it's ChatGPT that's writing this. What are you seeing when it comes to GPT and writing, particularly on your platform? Are you seeing a lot of folks starting to turn to that as a way to, because like you said, it's the hard writing is the hard part. A lot of folks want to get rid of the hard part and get to the easy part, which is collecting the money from subscribers.
Yeah.
What's your thought around that? How do you view it, and what do you want people? How do you want your writers on that are using Substack? How do you want them to look at ChatGPT and use it, if at all?
Well, I hope that the good outcome for this is that it becomes a major assistant to human creativity rather than something that overtakes human creativity. So if the computer is, like Steve Jobs described, a bicycle for the mind, then maybe AI or ChatGPT 3 or these kinds of things are like a motorbike for the mind, or like a jet boat for the mind, or like a nuclear reactor for the mind. And hopefully that will spur a lot of the creation of a lot of amazing works, and democratize the creation of those works a bit. Like now I've never been a great artist. I've never been great at painting or drawing, but now I can create art with language prompts. That's really interesting to me. I think it is an incredible technology. It's too early to call like how this is ultimately going to play out. We haven't seen very much. There's been little things here and there of AI generated content on Substack. I think the writing is still not good enough in terms of style and flair and human touches to convince people that they should be subscribing to the AI instead of a human, unless it's for like utilitarian kind of needs. But that could also change very quickly. But I think in the Substack context, one thing that will always be important and true is that the human relationships matter. So the direct connection between the writer and the reader, or the podcaster and the listener, and the sense that I am paying someone, a person who I want to succeed so they can continue producing this good work. I think that's always going to matter. And we're old school in a way where we're effectively doing, blogs and newsletters, or a hybrid of blogs and newsletters. Old school in the way is like of monetizing, where you decide whether you want to buy something or not. And I think that the old schoolness of the like human relationships will endure, and the importance of that will actually increase in an age where AI increasingly mediates everything.
I'm hopeful that, well, let's put it like this, with technology in itself is never bad for the most part. It's how people use it. And I'm just, there seems to be such a passion to get to the dollar and to use technology as a shortcut for things. Some things, technology, of course, you want to, routine stuff. Yeah, absolutely. But it feels like a lot of people, or maybe just enough people, use it in a way that it really shouldn't be used. And that kind of makes it worse for everybody. How do you see, kind of trying to avoid that pitfall? Because as we can see, you can ask it to write a poem, and then that poem could show up on, somebody's Substack. How do you, I don't know, how do you police for stuff like that? How do you address stuff like that?
Well, for us, the best we can do, I think, is try to create a good incentive system and a good business model. So the only way that Substack, the platform, can succeed is if the writers succeed themselves. We make 10%, we take 10% of subscription revenue they generate. So we've got to really prove that we provide a lot of value so that they're happy and they stay on the platform. Otherwise, they can pick up everything and leave. They own their content, their mailing list, their payments relationships through Stripe. They can up sticks and run away whenever they want. So that those incentives are aligned. And then the writers themselves can only succeed if their readers find what they're doing valuable. And so the writer has to keep rewarding that relationship and rewarding the reader's trust and attention. And if you've got that as the bedrock, then it makes it harder for people to play little cheating games to get ahead. Like my thing is going to be written entirely by AI, and it doesn't matter, what my voice or worldview is. I think that's just not going to work very well with the subscription model and in a model where people are banking on a good relationship.
Yeah. I tend to believe that with what you have built, the more that you write good stuff and engage with your audience, which are two mostly human activities, I think.
Yeah,
I
mostly.
think humans do that stuff better. And I think if you fully embrace that, then even with all the game playing, you should stand out. That's what I hope. That's what I believe. And I think your platform is kind of set up to prove that right. I wanted to
Thanks.
jump to this question because this is the guy who actually connected us.
Keith,
Shout
yeah.
out to Keith here. So Keith, thanks for joining and watching. He's a fellow Gilmore gangster. Any plans for live Substacks with streaming in real time comment? Ooh, good questions.
We're very, very interested in that area. I think it would make a lot of sense. The Substack model can work well there. We're still a little ways away from having anything like that, but we're very interested in building something.
Yeah, that would be great. To say that.
Then we can get you to move from LinkedIn over to Substack, and you can have that direct relationship.
Yeah, I mean, Keith brings up some really cool points because I think the other component is an additional real time where you can enrich the engagement, and I think that actually deepens the connection with the writer and the audience. Yeah, I would be all over that. What are some of the other things that you're hearing from customers that they want you to help them with?
People always want to help, want help to grow, to help find new readers, to find new paid subscribers. So we put a lot of focus on that. For example, we introduced a feature last year called recommendations, which are kind of like juiced up blog rolls for the mobile era. So recommendations are a feature where you, as the Substack publisher, can tell your readers that these other writers are worth paying attention to. These other writers that you love are worth subscribing to as well. And that feature, it's very simple, has driven a ton of growth for writers across the platform. Now more than 40% of all subscriptions and 15% of all paid subscriptions come directly from the Substack network, where recommendations are the key thing. So you get subscribers for free just by choosing to publish on Substack. It's better than getting them from Facebook or Facebook ads or social ads where the audience isn't as qualified. They don't necessarily understand what the Substack ecosystem is like. So we spend a lot of time thinking of that. We just announced a new feature, which we've actually had in beta for the last month, called Pledges, where it's kind of like, hey, here we go. Nice.
I got that notification like 30 minutes before we went on. I was like, oh, I got to finish up with this.
Yeah. Well, this is another good example of kind of like goodwill powering growth in the ecosystem. So recommendations are writer to writer goodwill expressions, and pledges is a way for readers to show writers that in advance that they would pay for them if their newsletter is free, but they haven't gone paid with subscriptions yet. The readers can commit to a monthly or annual subscription that will be activated when the writer eventually does go paid. So we're helping people hopefully get more paid subscriptions than they otherwise might have. We're helping them understand, get a better sense of their value, understand that, taking a leap to go paid might not be so scary after all, because there are people there ready to catch them. So generally, as a theme, helping writers grow, helping them find paid subscribers is a huge part of our focus, and people ask for that all the time.
One last question here, because I know you got to go. So thanks for your time. My buddy Gail Gardner asked, what would you say to writers who already have their own site about using Substack?
I would say you should strongly consider moving to Substack. It's hard to get people to visit a website in this day and age, mostly because it's not one of those rectangles that lives on everyone's home screen on their phones. But email is mostly on everyone's phones. It's one of the key little rectangles there. And so email is this channel that you have directly to people, so you can make sure that they see everything you publish, at least to the people who have committed to getting everything you published by signing up to you. And then you have the web version as well, so you have the chance for serendipitous discovery and finding new readers. And then you have a whole lot of other tools in the ecosystem that will introduce you to new people that will help you grow, that will help your stories have a chance of really spreading widely, and that give you a like really clear, simple business model if you do decide to try and make money from paid subscriptions. So I think it's you're handicapping yourself a little bit if you're only publishing to a website or a blog. You're depriving yourself of this incredibly important retention tool, which is a mailing list and a way to get inside people's inboxes and reaching people in this completionist way without having to rely on like a social media algorithm casting its favor on you in any particular moment.
Yeah. By the way, I think you might have just asked Gail's follow-up question about how you're getting into delivery into inboxes and things like that nature.
Yeah, so obviously a huge part of our business depends on doing those things well. And so we have a team of amazing engineers and data people who focus on making sure that our deliverability is amazing, not just good, but amazing. And we know all the tricks to help avoid spam filters. We get treated very well by the major email providers. They know what Substack is. And so people often express that as a concern before they move to Substack. And then we never hear complaints once they have moved to Substack. I think people are pretty satisfied.
Awesome. All right. I know you got to go. So Gail, thanks for joining us. And yeah, Martin, we were live. We're about to finish up the conversation here, but it's luckily it's recorded, so you'll be able to check it out. That's another buddy, Martin.
Awesome.
Yeah, and thank you to Gail for asking those questions, and thank you also, Hamish, for making time to do this for like the third time. The third time was the charm, so we got
third time lucky.
Really appreciate it. I think I know where people can go to learn more, but just so they can hear from you, where do people go to learn more about Substack?
I think you should go to substack.com. That's a pretty decent place. Plenty of good, juicy information there. Substack.com/signup is even better. There's a good, it's a good website there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for having me on the show, Brandon. Thanks for the great
Absolutely. I end on one last question, and I don't think I'm going to have to worry about this. Has been a great conversation. Usually this last question is a make or break if I'll ever talk to you again. No pressure. Do you have a favorite NFL team?
I guess I would have to say I live in San Francisco, and I realized that we just lost the game that precedes the Super Bowl. I'm not a huge NFL fan, but if I was going to say favorite team, just for nostalgic reasons, I lived in Baltimore for 3 years, and the Ravens won the Super Bowl while I was there, so I'll go with the Ravens.
All right, look, that's a safe one. You know, that's a good answer. That's a solid answer. There's only one wrong answer to that. That ain't it. If you had said the Patriots, I would have taken my account off of Substack.
I know not to make that mistake. No. Even as a foreigner who doesn't understand the game, I would never say that.
That's awesome. Hey, Hamish, this has been a pleasure. I would love to, maybe sometime down the road have you back and see where things are, because I love talking about this and what your platform is really. Yeah, I'm looking forward to learn more about it for myself. So
awesome.
Really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for the good questions and comments. And I'll be back in a couple of days with CRM players. So in the meantime, have a great rest of the day, and I will see you then.